It's a freezing cold morning here in Aschaffenburg, and I'm here waiting for a very special train which, in a slight departure for this channel, is going to be taking me to somewhere that isn't in Germany. This isn't a video about Salzburg, at least not primarily, although we will have time to take a look around. It's the video about how I got there, on a special train composed of a locomotive and rolling stock from the Deutsche Bahn museum in Koblenz, and run by an organisation of, it will not surprise you to learn, railway enthusiasts. And it was pure chance that I was able to get a ticket. It's a pretty enthusiastic community, and tickets sell out very quickly without them having to be advertised. I was actually sat in one of the more modern coaches, one of a type built between 1979 and 1986 for Intercity trains, although in its present form it was actually refitted in 2012. Wikipedia has this image of what it would have looked like originally, decorated in a style that was already going out of fashion. And yes, they did misspell my name here, although they did get it right on my ticket.
Dann möchte ich auch alle hier in Aschaffenburg zugestiegene Fahrgäste recht herzlich begrüßen in unserem Sonderzug mit Start in Koblenz zur Fahrt zum Weihnachtsmarkt nach Salzburg.
Since the train had been put together in Koblenz, that's where it started just before 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was going to be something like 23 hours before it would get back. Luckily, I joined the train at Aschaffenburg, so my day wasn't going to be nearly that long. The last part of the journey took us on the Rosenheim to Salzburg line, and here is a story worth telling, if only because it proves that missing deadlines and financial problems aren't uniquely modern phenomena. As early as 1828, Bavaria had plans to construct a rudimentary rail network even before Germany had steam trains. Salzburg, which was just over the border in Austria, was also included in the plans. Unfortunately, Bavaria was in economic crisis at the time, so nothing came of it. A new east-west line was proposed in 1843, this time including a branch to Kufstein, which is also in Austria. But now, the Austrian government had financial troubles, and once again, the idea came to nothing. The Kufstein branch, by the way, was planned to connect here at Rosenheim, which eventually it did. It was just going to take longer than expected. In 1848, it was decided that any route should be planned, built and operated by a private consortium. The following year, a new proposal was submitted. The year after that, the Munich-Rosenheim-Salzburg Railway Society was founded, but it was decided that to avoid arguments over the route, planning would be carried out by the state after all, and the state made one small modification to the plan. Instead of going through Glonn, the line would, as previous proposals had envisioned, go via Holzkirchen, where it could serve the coal mining area around the Miesbach Valley. In 1851, a treaty was signed by Bavaria and Austria. It would require Bavaria to complete its part of the project by 1858. Austria would be bound to build a line from Kufstein to Innsbruck by 1856, and then, by 1858, a line to connect Salzburg with the main Vienna to Trieste line. At the time, Trieste was a part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It only took another year for it to become clear that the Bavarian construction company wouldn't be able to make the deadline, so the government took over the project after all. And then in 1854, more bad news. Austria was finding construction more difficult than expected and announced it would be unable to honour the treaty, so construction stopped. Oh, and Austria was once again in an economic crisis, so a new treaty would have to wait. It finally came in 1856, whereby the expected construction timeline for the Salzburg to Bruck line was increased by 5 years. The Bavarians managed to complete the Munich to Rosenheim section, but the rest was dogged by construction problems and the discovery of the remains of a Roman settlement. Construction on the Kufstein branch had stopped completely because the necessary equipment was now being used on another line elsewhere and didn't resume again for another 2 years. Finally, in 1860, the line was complete, and King Maximilian II of Bavaria and Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria hosted a 3-day festival to celebrate. This was part of a revolution that transformed life for many people, although 11 years later a new, faster route between Rosenheim and Munich was opened, which is the line now used today. It's also the route our train took, a train which was put together from various coaches from the 60s, 70s and 80s. And on a personal note, it's slightly depressing to be travelling in a vehicle that is about as old as me and to hear it being described as a museum piece.
It's quite bizarre. This train is full of sights and sounds I haven't experienced for decades. This makes me quite nostalgic for my childhood, but it also makes me feel very grateful for the comfort of modern trains.
Who could forget, for example, the toilets that simply dumped everything onto the track, or the doors that you had to open yourself with brute force? At least the more modern coach I was in had doors that an 80-year-old with arthritis could operate. On the other hand, this was travelling in style. This car was used for Trans-Europe Express trains, the forerunner of the modern Eurocity, providing fast international connections with only first-class seats. Not until 1979 did Trans-Europe Express and Intercity trains carry second-class coaches. Appropriately, our train was hauled by a Class 103 locomotive, and if you know your historic German trains, you'll know your Class 103s. When they first entered service in 1970, they were the most powerful single-section locomotives in the world, and with a top speed of 200 kilometers an hour, hauled most of Germany's long-distance trains until the 1990s. In fact, as recently as 2017, some of the remaining Class 103s were occasionally used to haul regular intercity trains.
Now, the Deutschland ticket is valid on local trains coming from Germany as far as here, but if you want to use the local public transport in Salzburg itself, you normally have to buy an extra ticket. However, I'm here on the first Saturday in Advent, and on all the Saturdays in Advent this year, the buses are free.
We didn't have a lot of time in Salzburg, of course. The train itself was the highlight of the day, but enough for a quick look around. The city actually began as a Bavarian stronghold until it became an independent territory of the Holy Roman Empire in 1328, ruled by an archbishop. Starting in the 1600s, the city was given a modern facelift, which explains all the Baroque architecture everywhere. It was during this time that a religious dispute escalated into the 30 Years' War, but Salzburg managed to remain carefully neutral and spent its energies on improving its fortifications. The Holy Roman Empire came to an end in 1803, and the archbishopric was secularized, with Salzburg and nearby Berchtesgaden being taken over by the Austrian Empire, before both being handed over to Bavaria. And then, in 1816, Salzburg was returned to Austria, but Berchtesgaden wasn't. This explains the weird way that the German-Austrian border works at this point. If you want to drive from Salzburg to St. Johann, the most direct route is through Germany. Up until then, Salzburg wasn't really known to Austrians, but now a kind of primitive tourist trade started and never stopped. It probably helps that one of the Western world's most famous composers was born here, a fact that this city won't let you forget. And since we've been talking about the railway, the end of the 19th century brought all the benefits of fast connections to Munich and Vienna, making Salzburg immensely rich considering its remote location. It also managed to escape destruction at the end of World War II when Colonel Hans Lepperdinger disobeyed orders and surrendered unconditionally to advancing American troops. There's only one problem. On a day like today, with the Christmas markets open and the sun shining, the sheer number of tourists is unbelievable. Luckily though, as I said at the beginning, this video isn't about Salzburg. On this channel I try to avoid doing what an average tourist would do, and with only a few hours in the city to make a video, I felt very average indeed. But you have to admit that getting there in, let's face it, a museum is definitely not average. By the way, I've made a quick video with some of my more personal thoughts about my day out, but to see it you will need to be a channel member of level Beata or above. You too can become a channel member if you'd like to support me in the making of more videos like this, which of course cost money to make. If you're interested, you can find out more by clicking on the join button or using the link in the description.